Hello world, and welcome back to Evergreen Secrets. It's been almost a full season since my last video, so I apologize for the wait. Life, you know how it is. I've been really beaten up over the head by the universe lately that I need to start walking my talk and really getting into the ins and outs of making magic and to kind of really start playing with things. Um, it's now October, but last month was my birthday, and so I thought today that we would talk a little bit about birth cards, birth runes, and how that relates to your year card or year rune, and kind of the interesting things you can learn about yourself with those type of things. So it incorporates a number of things. You've got numerology, and then you've also got a little bit of math, which I always like. I'm a little bit of a nerd, so a little bit of math, a little bit of numerology, and some interesting relationships that you can see to kind of help you figure out how your year is going to go. And this is kind of interesting because usually I do this exercise in January because it helps me to learn kind of how my year is going to go, what the themes are going to be, what I should really concentrate on. And so since we're recording this in October, you've got a couple months to figure out what your card and rune for next year are going to be, and then you can kind of make that planning happen. So let's go ahead and go to the math. I'll be right back. Okay, here we go. So this is how you would calculate your tarot cards to figure out, first of all, what your birth tarot card is. So your birth card is basically the themes that you're going to see throughout your life and kind of your purpose. So what are you here on in this incarnation to learn and to do and to experience? And so for this example, I'm not going to use my birthday because this is social media and I'm a little social, a little conscious about putting that information out there. So for this example, we're going to look at one of my heroes, John Lennon. He is fabulous. And so what you do to calculate your birth card is you start by putting all the numbers out for the month, day, and year of your birth. So John was born on October 9th in 1940, and so you'll see there I've got 10 for October, 9 for the 9th of October, and then 1940. Obviously, for our friends who use the standard day, month, year, it doesn't really matter what order you're going to put these in because they're just getting all added together. All those integers get added together, and then it comes up with a final number. So in this case, it's 24. Now for tarot, there are 22 cards in the major arcana. So the 22 cards kind of represent the major archetypes that you'll live throughout your life. And so obviously 24 is more than 22. So anytime you're over 22, then what you do is you take those two numbers, the 2 and the 4, and add those together to get your final number. So for John Lennon, his final number is 6, and that in the tarot corresponds to the Lovers. So the Lovers card is all about connection, about relationships, and kind of experiencing where your limits are and how you respond to other people. And for those of you who are familiar with John Lennon, this is actually a pretty apt card for all the things that he experienced in life. I mean, he kind of had that lover's experience between his first wife and his second wife that nobody was really fond of, and he had some he was kind of a polarizing person, but at the same time his intentions were very good, and he really just wanted to relate to people. He also kind of liked to hang around naked in bed, so that kind of matches a little bit from for the Lovers card there. So for John Lennon, his kind of theme for his life is associated with the Lovers. So the next thing to calculate for you is to look at what your what your year card is. So this is something that's going to change every single year, and so it's not actually something that starts with your birthday. It would just be at the beginning of the year. So it's a little odd that I'm doing it this time, but we'll figure it out from there. So to figure out your year card, it's pretty much the same thing as your birth card, but instead of using your the year of your birth, you would use the year that it is now. So for John Lennon, we would use October 9th, 2015. And when we add all those numbers up together, we get 18. And 18, of course, is under 22. So that would match directly with one of the cards in the major arcana, which in this case is the moon. And the moon is kind of an interesting card because it's all about finding the things that are undiscovered. It's about finding the kind of the underlying issues that you might have. And so I think if John Lennon were alive today, he would be having a really interesting year. Maybe he would be doing some soul searching to see exactly what his goals were, and maybe he would be doing maybe even some shadow work to kind of discover those things that might be hidden from him. So he might be going through some interesting issues. Now, kind of the interesting thing about having a year card is realistically there are only 22 cards in the major arcana, and it's not really practical that you're going to have every 22nd person having the same theme for the year, right? So it's really taking that combination of the of your birth card and your year card and kind of juxtaposing them together to see kind of what the common themes might be. So it's kind of interesting here because with this one you see you've got the lovers and then you've got the moon, and both of them kind of have two kind of main characters that are opposing each other. In the lovers they're two people, and with the moon they're the two dogs or the two hounds there. And so it might be interesting that John might have had an interesting year where he would be exploring some of his more carnal and more primal urges in this year, and might be experimenting with that in some way. So that's kind of an interesting way to kind of look at the different cards. So for both the birth card and the year card together, kind of give you that complete picture. So then let's go ahead and take a look at runes. Okay, time to look at the runes. So for this one, obviously the basic concept behind it is very similar. So we're working again with numerology, and we're going to be working with both a birth rune and then also a year rune. So again, we're going to take that example of John and his experience in life. So first we start out with his month, year, and day of his birth, and in this case it adds up to 24. Which in when we're talking about the Elder Futhark of runes, there are 24 of those. There are some people who talk about the 25th rune. I don't actually prescribe to that, but so in this case we have 24, which is within the bounds of the Elder Futhark. And so in this case, what that corresponds to with the runes is Othala. So Othala is a rune all about the home, your hearth, kind of where you come and where you're most comfortable. And I think that actually pairs really well with John's his tarot card for his life, which was the Lovers, where it's really about, you know, who do you come home to at the end of the day? How are you happiest? What's comfortable? What's your karma in your life? And what are you building both for yourself and you know, your progeny, but also what are you building on from your history, your ancestors. So it's kind of interesting to see that his birth rune is also really similar to his tarot card for his life. So that's kind of an interesting little detail there. And then let's go ahead and look at what his year would have been like for this year. So again, for the year rune, it's very similar. So you take all of the numbers for his month, day, and this year, not the year of his birth anymore, and that again adds up to 18. which for runes adds up to being Berkana for the major or for the Elder Futhark. So Berkana is kind of an interesting rune because it's actually really associated quite a bit with feminine energies. Because if you think about Berkana, it's actually named after the birch tree, and there was kind of an interesting little custom that they would have, and they would actually women would actually whip themselves with Berkana branches, with birch branches, and as kind of a way of dealing with the difficulties of being a woman and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Also, if you kind of look at the letter itself, it looks a little bit like breasts, and so it's kind of an interesting, kind of a very feminine, kind of earthy type of a rune to go with. And so I think that actually kind of corresponds to his year card as well. So the moon and Berkana are kind of steeped in those mysteries of life that you may or may not have complete control over. So again, being able to take both your birth rune and your year rune and taking them together, that's going to give you a more complete view of what your year is going to be like. So you've got, so in this combination, we've got this idea of coming home and being comfortable in your hearth and your karma for this world. And then you've also got kind of this idea of the feminine energies and kind of expanding out into exploring, a little bit more of your feminine side. So that's kind of an interesting combination that he has there. All right, so there you have it. That's kind of an easy way for you to calculate your birth card and your birth rune, and also your year card and your year rune. And taking the combination of those can kind of give you some interesting insight about your life and how that year is going to go for you. And depending on what it is, you can plan for those opportunities. You can plan for ways to get around them if they don't look very promising, and then you can kind of create a game plan for your year that gives you a little bit of kind of control, which is kind of interesting because my year card for this year is actually the Chariot. And so this year for me is all about kind of gaining control and kind of seeing how I can work with the energies that exist in my life as they are, rather than trying to be the 100% kind of tight-fisted penny pincher that I tend to be. So being able to give in and relax and allow the forces that are driving me to kind of have their way, but at least being in that guiding seat and being able to nudge them in the direction that I want is something that I've definitely been learning this year. It's been quite a challenge, especially with little kids. That's always a little bit interesting. So it's been kind of interesting to see how appropriate this card has been for me this year. Kind of one of the things that I've always struggled with the birth card is the first time I did it, I thought the math must be wrong, because of all the people in the world, I have a birth card of the Lovers. And which is really kind of shocking to me. I don't really consider myself to be a very interpersonal type of a person. I am not, I generally tend to be a lot more clinical, a lot more logical, a lot more, a little bit more fiery, I guess is a better term. And the Lovers is a very watery, a very sensual, and a little bit of an interesting thing, because I tend to not be a very interpersonal person. And so I've always really struggled with this being my birth card. And so this year, being able to kind of look at the kind of juxtaposition between the Lovers and the Chariot, and being able to see that my life really is actually taking a bit of a turn, and being able to recognize that the relationships in my life really are important, and they do have a really profound impact on my life, and seeing this year, unfortunately, how they're failing. Not in a really bad way. I haven't had any negative experiences, but I'm definitely seeing that there are some things that I need to improve on, and so while I see that maybe my nature is not the lovers, maybe the lovers for me in this lifetime are the lesson point, and maybe that's why the universe is bopping me over the head with it so much lately. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And then when I calculated my runes for both myself and then also for the year, I actually found that those fit a little bit better. So the first one is for my birth rune, and that was Kenaz, which is the torch. And this is a really fiery energy. It's about the creative spark and just going out there and getting it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't feel like I'm really driven, but I am a little bit driven, and I've always kind of attached myself to this rune in different ways. I thought about getting a tattoo with Kenaz on it, and kind of incorporating that, because I really appreciate that fiery and creative spark, and being able to create, whether it's something that's technical or if it's something that's a little bit more artistic. I've really appreciated that energy in my life, and it also actually fits because I have an Aries rising, so that kind of makes it a little bit more sense as well, just having that fire, because that's otherwise on my astrology chart I don't have a lot of fire, but I do have that Aries rising, which does match very well with Kenaz. And this year, kind of again that interesting thing that's been kind of popping up over and over in my life is Gebu, and Gebu is the key word for Gebu is gift, but that's really entrenched in the kind of the society that the Norse people have, and the expectations that gifts have. And so if you look at it, it actually looks like kind of two hands crossing when you kind of squint your eyes a little bit, and it's kind of the intersection of two people. And so the interesting thing with that is it actually sorry, that's getting a little heavy there. It's kind of interesting because there's this whole um, kind of social norm where a gift kind of makes a gift. So the gift reciprocation is expected, right? So it's not something where you give just out of the goodness of your heart. You give with the expectation that that person is going to reciprocate in some way. Maybe it's a gift, maybe it's a service, maybe it's just their presence can be a gift in and of itself. And of course there are all the rules around being a good house guest, and things like, when you go over to a house, you always bring something. You bring a bottle of wine, or you bring a loaf of bread or something like that, but there's always a gift that's associated with that. And so it's kind of interesting to see that that Gebu is actually very well associated with the lovers, because there's always that interaction, that expectation that comes with having a relationship. And so that's been kind of an interesting thing for me to see for this year. But anyway, I think we are kind of at the end of this topic. I'm hoping to get more videos up now that I've got a little bit more of an impetus to do so. I kind of got a little bit of a kick in the butt with the supermoon eclipse that happened last week, and so I'm hoping to take some of that energy and drive it into more content. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.